Good afternoon. I'm basically just leaving this video here really so you can kind of go away and do your homework really on the possibilities of just what oxygen is and what is oxygen doing in the body. What is it doing on a cellular level in humans? Put the biomechanics aside and the biochemistry. What is the brain doing with oxygen? Well, oxygen is needed for every cell in the body, and I'll explain a little bit as to why the oxygen advantage is going to be so important to everybody really. I think over the next sort of few years it's going to explode a little bit, because what the brain is doing with oxygen constantly is watching it. And because I keep mentioning, and other coaches keep mentioning, other breath coaches keep mentioning that you can go for weeks without food, you can go for days without water, but you can only last 3 minutes without air. And if we think about that, it would be safe to say that the brain is thinking about oxygen probably more than we give it credit for. And when we talk about fight, flight, and freeze, mobilization of the animal, we take a breath every time we do it. So that's how much your brain is connecting breath to the possibility whether you may survive a certain situation, or how much of a threat or how arousing that is to you as an individual, which is completely different. It's using oxygen as the forefront of what it needs to be around for the next 3 minutes. So the brain is watching oxygen a lot, and 20% of the oxygen that you consume every minute is going to the brain. 20% of your blood is going to the brain. So it's concentrating a lot on it. It has a lot of it. It needs it, as well as glucose, we know, but it needs oxygen. So the reason why the oxygen advantage is so important is because if you're a functional breather, you're more likely to get more oxygen given. Claustrophobia. Now, I really want to look into claustrophobia, and I've spoken to so many people who have claustrophobia and who have ADHD as well, and they have OCD, and people that like to be in control, or the fear of losing control. How much of that is connected to oxygen? There are certain scientific papers, if you go and read them, they're super interesting, about how the brain is focusing on oxygen when you go into tight spaces. So is it a fear of tight spaces? Well, yeah. But what's the brain actually thinking? It's thinking that it's not really going to get any oxygen of which it needs to survive. The brain's just starting in sunny Derbyshire. So I'll give you a scenario. So if you're a bit claustrophobic, say for instance, and you're waiting for a lift to go down, it's a 20-person lift, and I say this to all my clients. It's a 20-person lift, and the door's open and it's empty. There's nobody around. You don't really like lifts, but you get in it and you press the button to go to ground floor, you stand in the middle and you're okay. Believe it or not, if you look at people when they enter lifts or leave lifts, a lot of them take a breath on exit and entrance. It's quite specific. It's what a lot of people do as soon as they go into a different portal or into a different environment, they take a breath. I watch them do it all the time. So how do you feel about that lift? Okay, fine. Now have a think about the next lift that comes down. It's the same lift, 20-person lift, only this time there's about 15 people in it and the door's open. Now people that are a bit claustrophobic will say, no, there's no way. I'd use the stairs, or I would wait for a lift that was quieter. So how much is that connected to being afraid of tight spaces, and how much of it is being triggered by the brain to say that those other animals might be taking your oxygen, and there's going to be less oxygen in there because there's other people in there? Is this one of the reasons why people don't like being in crowded spaces? Is the brain thinking specifically about oxygen? I think it is, and there's probably a lot of science to back this up, but it makes a lot of sense. So if you go into planes or trains, for instance, or you go into a cinema, if you go on a plane or a train, are you more likely to pick a seat near an exit? Are you more likely to pick a seat that's on an aisle, so that you're kind of thinking about an escape plan? What is escape? it's the fear of not being able to get out, but how much of that is connected to oxygen? In terms of your interoceptive state of environment, how much of that is connected to oxygen? I would say almost certainly that if your Bolt score was higher, that you would feel slightly different in those environments. And I am going to start to investigate it, and I'd also really like to investigate what it would be like for claustrophobic people to get into small spaces while they're breathing in more oxygen, and while they do some breathing exercises beforehand to alter their biochemistry so that they uptake maybe a little bit more oxygen, and how that would affect their mental state in doing something in the past that they've been very frightened to do. I'm almost certain that oxygen will relieve some of it. So have a think about that anyway. So mobilization and breath, you know, what is going on in the body? If somebody sticks something in you, or somebody creeps up on you, or if you're frightened by anything that you witness on telly or day-to-day life, you'll take a breath, you'll take a gasp. The first thing that your nervous system wants you to do is connected to oxygen. The first mobilization response is breath. So that is mega important. This is why it's advantageous as animals to have more oxygen. It's critical for life. So also have a bit of a think about, why can we as animals, why can we as humans control our breath? Okay, we can't control our digestive system. We can't really control much else in the body apart from our motorized movement. Why are we still able to hold our breath, to force our breath out, to force our inward breath? Why are we given so much control over how much oxygen we can take in or get rid of? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why we have control over that. It's because we're supposed to use it. And I think we've just forgotten how to breathe. We've forgotten how to use our respiratory function to change our inner state. And I think this is why oxygen is just so important. I hope you understand that, and I hope you can get your head around it. If you have any questions, just pop them down below. Or if you have any questions for me about claustrophobia, or the fear of tight spaces, OCD, how much of OCD is connected to oxygen? I think quite a lot, because this fear of losing control, or the fear of not being in control, is connected to oxygen, almost certain of it. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, just leave them down below, and I'll come straight back to you. Thanks so much.